Oh, my goodness. That just continues to crack me up. The Big Millie. Ram, you've outdone yourself, as always. Kevin Miller in the morning here at 580-5436. 580-KIDO. Our great friend Dave Petzo is here. We'll talk to Dave in a minute. But first, one of the big issues that we will address with Dave is the president talking about tariffs and what it means to your 401ks and the steel industry and your IRAs.
The president defended his plan to impose new tariffs on steel and aluminum. Now, this plan imposes a 25% tariff on steel and 10% on aluminum, and it's intended to protect U.S. industries and employ thousands of Americans, and in the name of national security. But the announcement has sparked a very heated debate indeed, with warnings of retaliation and a costly trade war drawing criticism here at home and abroad. It's angering world leaders. It's rattling markets. China and the EU are upset. But also we have Democrats and Republicans here in Congress pushing back on it.
And there we have it, a heavy sigh from Dave Petzo concerning tariffs and the like. Immediately, I don't know if you've brainwashed me all these years together, but I thought of you once President Trump made this big announcement, and I go, well, I wonder what Dave Petzo thinks about all this.
Well, Kevin, first of all, I got to take a step back, and that's what I try to do with big announcements like this that are affecting the markets, is to not just overreact to them and just say, oh, well, this is all bad. And free trade is a very important part of what makes the economy work so well in the United States. It's why we're the biggest nation in the world. It's one of the reasons. It's all positive. But this is something the president said when he was campaigning, that he wants to redo trade deals. He's going to do that. So we take a step back and say, this is what he said all along. The economy is rolling. Things are good. And we're clear into the second year, and now he's making his move on trade. I think that it's something that, he's been talking about for a long time. But even recently in the markets, they've been talking about this. This isn't news, number one. Number two, I don't know that this isn't just negotiation. Why would he say we're going to roll over like everybody has? And three, all we've ever seen in the past is all of the past presidents, but in particular Obama, did nothing in the world. I mean, zero. He didn't do anything with North Korea, didn't do anything in the Middle East. Well, he did. He blew it up. But at the same time, on trade, it was basically nothing was done, and nothing has been done. So we have a situation where the president's stepping forward and doing something. I don't want to overreact. I'm a free trade guy. I believe in it, and tariffs are a bad idea. We don't want a trade war. But at the same time, the United States is not in a position where we need to roll over anymore. It's time that somebody did something. So I'm going to give him a pass for a little while, even if it causes short-term disruption in the market.
So you're thinking this is a good thing?
I'm thinking it's a negotiation tactic above everything else.
25% on steel, 10% on aluminum.
Yeah.
Many people think that this is a good thing. I think it's a good thing. The president keeping his word.
I think that,
unlike other politicians.
I agree, Kevin. It was something he said he was going to do, and he's doing it. I think that we do need to quit backing up on everything. I mean, when you think about what has happened, we just go ahead and do a deal for, the Iranians say, hey, would you just give us $1 billion and play nice, get rid of sanctions, and then we'll pretend to get rid of our nuclear program. And we're, woohoo, let's do that. And then North Korea, nobody's done anything about it. We're seeing a president that actually sits down and tries to do something. And so many of these problems out there, including these trade issues, were laid at his doorstep. That was not something that any president has done anything about before. I want free trade. I really believe in free trade. I think it's a good thing to renegotiate some of our deals.
But it hasn't been fair in quite some time.
It hasn't, Kevin.
Now, myself, Patrick Joseph Buchanan, and others have talked about this for years. The Chinese dump steel into our markets.
Yep.
The Japanese do the same thing, and we drive the good American businesses out of work.
We have, in particular, NAFTA has been a big problem for that, and that's why we have to pay attention to where this steel comes from. It is not China. China's a nice, easy thing to throw rocks at. I get that, and I get that from a political perspective. But Trump, when he talks about that, is dead wrong. I think only 3% of our steel comes. It's very, very low number. It's like below 5% of all the steel comes from China. They're not the ones dumping. It's actually, the problem is whether we can compete or not against Canada and Mexico, Brazil. Those are the big ones for our imports, and it is important that we have steel. We cannot possibly think it's okay for the Chinese to be making steel and saying it's okay, these will really work well on your tanks. this will work really well on your aircraft. We can't think like that. These people are our enemies, and we have got to have our own capability here for national security interest.
Let's go to Max in Garden City. You're going to have to plug yourself in there.
I'm plugging in.
Max in Garden City joining us now on KIDO Talk Radio. Kevin Miller with our great friend Dave Petzo. Good morning, Max.
Good morning, Kevin. Good morning, Dave.
Good morning.
Dave, nice of you to mention China, but something I wanted to put in underneath that. True, China's not selling us a whole bunch of steel, but that hasn't been their plan. They openly boast over there that they will dominate our economy through what they call tariff technology. China is masterful at cheating with the value of the money and at cheating with tariffs. Okay, if President Trump hadn't done this, by the way, good man, Mr. Trump, if he hadn't done this, China would continue to dump more and more steel. Our steel industry would become more of a wreck than it already is, and they would eventually win. Do you know what the tariff is by chance for American steels going to China?
I do not, no. Mm-mm.
I do. 1,300%. Look it up. I'm not exaggerating.
Right.
1,300%. And they're whining about 25.
Right. Because
it's disrupting the overall plan. A quick, cheap plug. Read my book, Eyes on China.
Is that all you've got? You're giving us a little thing on the tariffs, then right to the book plug, the shameless book plug?
Shameless book here on KIDO Radio with Kevin Miller in the morning. A shameless plug talking to Mr. I forgot your name, sir. I'm sorry. Your marvelous guest there. And then, of course, Max Allen and Eyes on China and Paper Dragon.
All right,
Paper
Dragon.
Reads.
All right, we appreciate that. Thank you very much. Let's continue on. We go to Hank in Boise, who wants to talk tariffs with Dave Petzo and Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Hank.
Okay. I might point out that historically, the last three big tariff attempts on raising on steel and on general things, the Fort Macumber tariff in 1922, the Smoot-Hawley, and then later the attempt under the second Bush in 2004 did not work out. In other words, they were in a lot of ways disasters. And and I'm in agreement with Dave Petzo, if they're trying to do it as a negotiating tactic, but I'm not sure that your tariff thing in the long run is going to be a good thing. If we can get free trade across the board with everybody, the whole world benefits. The problem is that a lot of people who cry about the United States, like in Europe, are big hypocrites about it. The French are big tariff people, and their own policies are destructive to a certain extent, destructive to their own economies. And I don't understand, and yet they'll cry about the United States, slapping on a tariff when they themselves don't practice what they preach.
Well, they certainly don't. The rest of the world has their own tariffs, and it's not just China. Everybody likes to, like I said before, everybody likes to pick on China, and I will too. I'm not here to defend.
Wait a minute, are you defending China?
Yeah.
I think I think Dave Petzo's running for office.
Right. I think that we have to think of this practically. It's not that we're trying to only pick on China. We've got to understand that whether it's NAFTA and other elements of that need to be redone, the United States needs to quit apologizing for being the greatest nation in the world. And I think that's one of the reasons why Trump is president. He came out and said we've got to redo our trade deals. They're really awful. And they are. We have huge trade deficits, and not all of them are awful. And let's not forget that free trade leads to lower prices on everything. It's one of the main reasons, if not the main reason, why our country is the biggest economic power in the world. I am not for a bunch of tariffs, but we need free trade.
We also have the biggest deficits in the world.
We do. And
because it's not fair trade.
We will still have deficits, Kevin, because our economy is so strong and we import so much. But still, we should be having a shrinking deficit. And we are in a position now where, with our energy prices being so low, meaning natural gas, so plentiful, businesses should be moving here, not away from here. And that's what one of the main changes I think is going to occur under this president.
I also comment, would it be possible that they could help the steel industry by maybe some tax measures like accelerated depreciation, like on
Kevin, you're
equipment and plant?
Help me here.
Indeed. All right, Hank, thank you for the call. 580-5436, 580-KIDO.
We're just going to have to play that game. Headphones are not working.
Headphones went down.
They went down. They just simply went down. So
let's go to our friend Lars Larson on the Lars Larson Show, larslarson.com. Of course, you catch him weeknights from 6 to 9. Should the United States adopt steel and aluminum tariffs? 62% of the people responding say yes.
Yeah.
And we believe it's a good thing. Now, will this impact the car industry? Because people say all of a sudden the car industry will take a dive because we can't get cheap cars anymore. Of course, now this is one thing that I love about you, Dave Petzo, is that you're fiscal conservative when it comes to vehicles. Your car's what?
10 years old.
Okay.
Yeah.
So last night I'm going to Holy Apostles to the 6 o'clock Mass, made famous by all the people that go. It's the last chance to get redemption. And I'm pulling in. I'm feeling pretty slick. I've got my 07 Camry. All decked out, paid for.
Yeah.
And you get in that car and it just raises my self-esteem by like 20 points. And then all of a sudden I look next to me and you're gonna just be amazed. I saw a decked out, pulled right next to me, decked out Jaguar. And I'm going, who in the Treasure Valley is driving a Jag? Black on black. And I'm going, that's what, $60,000, $70,000 car right there. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, we are getting some economic development here. What this has to do is, the idea of tariffs, you're going to raise taxes on a Toyota or it's going to raise taxes on a Ford or a Jaguar, right?
Right. And it will. There's no question that it's going to go up. But we need to really, and this is a great thing. I pointed people to this on Saturday, and I'll point again. If you haven't seen Wilbur Ross's piece on CNBC, he talked for about 20 minutes, but there is a nice clip out there about 4.5 minutes long. And Wilbur Ross is nobody to be trifled with. I mean, you just can't argue with the guy. He's just so steady, brilliant, has been for a long time, soft-spoken, just a smart man. And he talked about how he held up a can of Coke and a can of Campbell's soup. And he said, everybody's talking about your beer is going to go up in price and all these things, right? And that was the headlines. You know how much is in a aluminum can? And if the tariff is fully imposed, it will be 0.03 cents. 0.03. So that $5 draft you're having at the bar is going to go up 0.03 cents. That isn't going up. Nobody cares about the 50 cents per, pint tax that's on this. We're going to go and be ballistic about that. It is overstated how much this is going to affect. To me, it's something we need to do. It's a shot over the bow. And oh, by the way, the Campbell's soup, 0.06 cents on a $2 can of soup. It's going to go up 0.06 cents. So the answer is on aluminum on an automobile, steel. That's a lot more. It's going to go up, and I don't believe in the long run it really goes up because the tariffs will come back off.
Unless you buy American, truly American.
No, it still affects them because the tariff will raise the prices.
They'll have to buy American steel.
Well, and American steel is going to cost 25% more because that's what the tariff is.
We'll talk a little bit about that next. Sorry to cut you off there, Dave Petzo.
Yep.
Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. All right, Dave Petzo is with us once again, our great friend, Money Matters, the Petzo Center, Petzo Financial. Oh, so the big impact on the markets. You were telling our friends at Channel 7 it was the best week ever. Basically, all the corrections have been corrected. What's going on in the markets from those of us that rely on you and not the fake news from the financial community, CNBC, and all those other jabronis?
Right. Well, it was the week before. Now, last week, Kevin, was not a good week. We pulled back, and, of course, the fear of tariffs and how that might create a trade war, all those things. Knee-jerk reaction on Thursday was very negative. And but again, on Friday, interestingly, the market opened down a lot and completely turned around. Only the Dow was still down at the end of trading, and it wasn't down much. The other indices were up, and tech stocks only went down 1% for the week. And Small cap stocks the same. So it really wasn't as bad a week as the headline Dow number. But you're right. The prior week was one of the best weeks we've had in years, and the correction did temporarily, quotes, end. We'll see if we retest the lows. We certainly are far from those at this point. And I don't see any fundamental reason. Earnings, Kevin, came through at an amazing pace this past week. Past season here. But last week, this kind of draws to a conclusion, the earnings reporting. And Kevin, this is the first time in 10 years. I mean, the earnings are at such a high level now that companies are beating them at a record level. So we're seeing an amazing push on earnings. They were up over 15% for this period, and that does not include tax cuts. So fabulous earnings growth.
Indeed, of course, we'll see more of that. Now, let's get back to the car business, which has been on fire lately. So, we go back to what President Reagan did. You're a huge fan of President Reagan back in the 80s when people say he saved the American car industry by putting a 25% tariff on the Japanese cars that at the time, just like today, they were running wild, dominating the market. The problem is the American car manufacturers raised their prices as well to 25%. But could we see some of these cars that have been affordable, the great financing, could this impact car sales?
It could. I don't think it'll be a big deal. Yes, the car is going to cost more money, and profitability will go down because the car manufacturers are going to continue to compete with each other, and there's too many car manufacturers in the world, which is great for the consumer. So we get an amazing product for a lot less because there's so many people out there running for that consumer. Are running at that consumer. Now, what we're going to see is clearly the cost of steel and aluminum go up. And what the tariff does is it is imposed on foreign, which also mean foreign imports of the steel, which also means that then the American manufacturers will raise their prices as well. They simply will raise them. Now, that means obviously no matter what happens, it's going to cost more. But there are ways to get around it, and all of the different industries will, and that's the fallout that occurs. And that would be that they start manufacturing lots of parts, let's say steel or aluminum heavy parts in their Canada factories. They will adjust if there's a feeling that this is a long-term penalty and will not be changed. I don't think anybody really feels that way. When you've been told that now you can no longer dump steel or dump this or do this or make ridiculous profits, then of course it's all fire and fury and you're going to be all upset. And that's what the world is acting like right now, even though the French don't allow this and the Germans hate this and they tax or have tariffs on this and that. And all other countries act the same way. What we're really saying is the United States should just give stuff away, and we need to be being decimated in certain industries, and that time has changed. There's a new sheriff in town, and that's not going to be the case. I still hold that it's a negotiation tactic. I do not think it's the end of free trade, and I don't think this is a disaster at all.
Traffic and weather together. So we continue on here with our great friend Dave Petzo, Kevin Miller in the morning. U.S. News and World Report saying Idaho is the fastest growing state. Forbes magazine, your beloved Boise, is number one, the fastest growing city. But really, it's the Treasure Valley, not just Boise.
It is.
Of course, I don't think my own bias, I don't think the Treasure Valley gets the credit for really the growth. People just say Boise, Boise, Boise.
I know. It really is because of Boise that the Treasure Valley exists. Those
national publications are so well informed about the magic of the communities outside of the highly taxed, regulated suffrage that is Boise, Idaho.
I'm not going to disagree with that statement at all.
Figured you'd like. I'm a little pandering to you. But a couple of years ago, I went to a conference in Phoenix and Scottsdale, and I was amazed at all of the high luxury cars. We're starting to see that here.
Yeah.
Historically, where are we with all these folks moving in? And it's not stopping. It's going to continue for quite some time. So, Dave Petzo, as the defender of the realm, where do you see us right now?
Well, Kevin, I want my old Boise back, and I don't get to have that. I love the vibe that we have in Boise. I've loved it for a number of years now. I think it's incredible. You walk through downtown anytime, and it's very alive and very vibrant. There's no question. There's something going on here, but it always has. I think what we're missing or we're going to miss as more and more people come in, it's not just traffic and congestion. It's the fact that people just aren't as nice when they're crowded.
Yep.
It really is. And I just think that Boise's always had that, and that's something that you don't notice until you go other places. You don't notice until a new neighbor moves in and says, "Why did you move here?" I don't know. The people are just so nice, and when you think about it, they are. And I think we're already losing that, where you can run into people that are not nice.
The mean people moving in.
The mean people are moving in. There's no doubt about it. And I think that we do have a circumstance here where that is, to me, where you feel more crowded. You feel more like I need some elbow room. I can't get where I want to go. All of those things lead to a little more discontent in this beautiful, amazing place. You can't find a parking place up at Bogus Basin. That's frustrating.
Are we going to become a bigger Montana? And people talk about the way of life of folks in Montana. They're hardworking, conservative people. And then you have the elites coming in from Hollywood with their big money jags and everything else, just diluting or poisoning that great quality of life. That I look at folks that are ranchers and farmers, and I go, my goodness, they're the salt of the earth, and they work every day. And then I see, the big folks coming in from, the luxury items and everything else from California and what have you. There are good people that come in from California, but I'm just going, a culture shock here.
Yeah, it is, and we've seen what's happened up in the North End. It's as liberal as parts of San Francisco.
They're not
crying out loud.
They're not holding a Kevin Miller parade.
No, I mean, and this is right in Boise. People think Boise's conservative. It's not. It's not conservative at all. The liberals run government around here, and they do, and they run a lot of the departments in the state.
Right.
There's no question. It's really not as conservative a state as we think it is.
Well, that's why we have such great oases such as Meridian
and Star,
Nampa, Caldwell,
anywhere outside of Boise.
Right.
But the point is that to me it also creates a great mix of culture, and it really does. The thing that is different than say Seattle and Portland and San Francisco is that we actually have a diversity of thought here. They have none. You're not allowed to be a conservative in those areas. You are shouted down, you're yelled down. Here, even people who have a leftist view are allowed to have their time, and people listen. We don't have to all agree, but I think it's that dialogue, that difference, that also makes life better, and we all think better when we actually can listen to a different opinion.
Yeah, but that's going away.
I don't know if it's going away.
Look at Dave Beater.
Yeah. What about Dave
He's
Beater?
a lib.
Yes, he is.
Look at the city council, libs.
Yes.
Look at Ada County. You'll talk to many Republicans. Ada County's almost 50-50 now.
Yeah.
The libs.
It's true. I know. This area is not as conservative as it used to be. But that's the mix, Kevin. That's the mix.
I'm thinking of really going into a couple other careers because, conservative radio will be over. Maybe country music, maybe the oldies. I'm kind of aging into the oldies. Maybe photography, maybe real estate. You got any other kind of careers?
Finance.
I'd have to learn how to work numbers.
You would have to learn numbers. Yeah.
Yes.
That's all right. I'm not very good at numbers. It's okay.
Dave Petzo, the Petzo Center, Petzo Financial. Thank you, sir.
It's good to see you, Kevin. Thank you.
And before we get to your calls, let's go to State Representative Christy Zitto. Representative Zitto, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Kevin. How are you this morning?
Not bad. I was tagged on your video, so as soon as I woke up this morning, I took a look at it, and there's always some interesting things going on at the legislature. This one, not a really good one. What's going on?
Well, I'm not really sure. We had the print hearing for House Bill 444 several weeks ago, and I would, like last year, go back in and ask the chairman when we would have a hearing for that bill, and, check with me Monday or check with me next week or check with me this or that. And so then I went in, I forget what day, the last time I went in, and he said, we're waiting to hear what happens with Senate Bill 1313, which was the first that I had heard of it. And he said, it's a bill they're bringing from the Senate side, and it's just a better bill. And he said, after that hearing, then we'll see about it. And so then they had the hearing on 1313, and Friday afternoon, I'm standing in the hall, and the chairman's secretary comes up to me, and she said, the chairman has scheduled 1313 to have a hearing and House Bill 444 to both have a hearing on Tuesday. And I said, okay, great, for sure. And she said, yes. And I said, because we have people who are going to fly in to testify. And, I don't want them to have to do that until we know for sure. And she said, no, that's what he said. So the people that were going to fly in, there's a woman in northern Idaho whose husband has been in prison because of the exact same thing that our stand your ground legislation would prevent. And the Idaho Second Amendment Alliance, the members raised enough money to fly her down here, get her something to drive and a place to stay so that she could come and testify Tuesday on House Bill 444. And I got a text message from the chairman's secretary yesterday afternoon, about 5:45, that said that he had decided to wait and hear 444 later in the week. So I tried to call the chairman a couple of times, and another legislator who's an acquaintance of his tried to call him a couple of times, and we didn't get an answer. And that's what I know today.
And Representative Zito, this is the Stand Your Ground bill, and for people that aren't familiar with it, could you explain it to us?
Yes, what it is our Stand Your Ground bill would make it so that the presumption of guilt is not on the person who's had to use deadly force to defend themselves or their family or loved ones or someone in their presence. It would make it so that you would not have to prove that you had opportunity to retreat before you use deadly force, because sometimes you just don't. It has a criminal immunity clause in it so that if you are prosecuted and found innocent, that you could have reimbursement for your court costs. Because not only are you devastated because you've had to take a life, but once you go through a court proceeding like that, you'll be financially ruined as well. Because for most people, I mean, if you're financially well off and you can afford it, maybe you can, but for most of us, something like that would just be devastating. And so this bill actually protects your Second Amendment right to be able to defend yourself or those you care for.
And this is something that you and the Idaho Second Amendment Alliance have been trying to get to a vote for a while, for many, many years. So where do we go from here, and what would be your message to the chairman if he's listening?
Well, my message to the chairman would be, this is not my bill. And as you said, I am the sponsor of it here in the legislature, but this is a bill that has been asked for by the citizens of Idaho. I believe that Alex Kincaid and the Second Amendment Alliance have been working on this bill 4 years that I know of, maybe more than that, I'm not sure, but I know 4 years for sure. When they first started to work on it, the NRA had input on it. The bill has been redrafted several times to try to please everybody, but we all know no matter how hard you try with language like this, you're not going to get everybody happy all the time. So my message to the chairman would be that, this is what the citizens have asked for. On my desk, there were 7,000 petitions signed by members of the Idaho Second Amendment Alliance across the state. And those were just people that took time to sign petitions and send them in or email them in or whatever. This isn't something that has just happened overnight. This isn't an appeasement bill. This isn't a make you feel good bill so that people can stand up and say, oh, I passed gun legislation, vote for me. This is a bill that will actually help and protect the citizens of the state of Idaho if they are ever in that horrible situation where they have to use deadly force to defend themselves or someone in their presence.
How necessary is this bill?
Any bill that deals with the Second Amendment and makes it so that we are closer to shall not be infringed is one of the most important bills that I believe can go through the legislature. The Second Amendment is there to preserve our rights, to protect ourselves, to protect those we care for, to protect ourselves against a tyrannical government. And that's why it was put there, Kevin. It was put there to protect all of the other rights that are afforded us by our Creator and are supposed to be protected by our government. And that's why the Second Amendment is so important. So any legislation that puts us closer to the true meaning of the Second Amendment is very, very important.
Well, Representative Zito, hopefully this bill will get a hearing, will get to the floor, and we can continue to make Idaho safer. Anything else we should be looking out for this week?
Well, there's a lot going on in the legislature this week. There will be a lot of things coming through that will deserve a lot of discussion and listening to. The one thing that I would do, like I always do, I encourage everyone to be aware of the legislation that's coming through. You know, some things I get letters, well thought out, well written letters from people in our state, and that means a lot because citizen input to me is so important because we are all in this together. And so be aware of what goes on in your legislature. Listen to the hearings in committees when you can. Listen to what happens on the floor. When you have questions, call your legislators or email them and talk to them. Don't send a form letter because when you get, even if it's 500 of the same form letter from some action group or whatever, you know, you look at the title and it just, you look at the title. But when you get it, at least for me, when I get an email or a phone call or a message from someone who has thought it out, who is concerned, who has taken the time to write their own personal letter and let me know their thoughts, that's huge, and that carries a lot of weight. So I cannot encourage people enough to be engaged, to be aware of what goes on, because everything that happens in this building in the 3 months that we are here will have an effect on your life at some point or another. And it's your government, and you need to know what goes on, and you need to be actively engaged.
Well, we'd love to have you back, and thanks for the video last night. It got us rolling today.
Oh, anytime, Kevin, like I've told you before, I really appreciate that, you know, you're a voice of freedom and truth, and people can come on here and say what they feel and say what they think, and you give them time to speak, and I really appreciate that. I appreciate that you give voice to the citizens of the state of Idaho. So, you know, anytime I can be of service, anytime I can come on, I'm more than happy to. And thank you for all you do.
Well, thank you, Representative Zito. You take care now.
You too. Have a great day, Kevin.
You too. Bye-bye. Representative Christy Zito joining us. By the way, the chairman of that committee is Chairman Lurcher. Maybe you'd like to give him a call or a message to have that hearing concerning the Stand Your Ground law. Very important here in Idaho, certainly with the debate on the Second Amendment, not only here but across the country. Liberty Linda, thanks for your patience. You're on with Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Liberty Linda.
Good morning, Kevin. You know, I love tuning into your show, Kevin, and hearing Common Sense in the morning.
That's a good one.
Thank you very much for having that lovely lady on. Because, you know, that's common sense. That's one thing I love about Idaho. The Idahoan people are just wonderful people. They're down to earth. They know the difference between common sense and what we're hearing. And that's actually what I wanted to talk about this morning is common sense. Because, Kevin, we don't hear a lot of common sense anymore through our media, anywhere. You know, especially about these gun things, you know, what they're talking about. You know, that, you know, we're blaming the gun and not the person. Does that make any common sense whatsoever?
No.
You know, I thought common sense means a consensus amongst most people, but, you know, we're only hearing from one type of person most of the time. And the common sense people are not being heard at all. So thank you again for having that lady explain that to us about 444 and 1313.
Well, again, I think if you defend yourself in your home with your weapon, it shouldn't bankrupt you.
Absolutely. And we have a right to do that in this country. That's why we love our founding fathers. They saw ahead of time what we needed in this country, and they gave it to us. And, you know, that's why we love this country. You know, I'm very excited about our president and him bringing back tariffs. Our founding fathers gave us that as well, instead of taxing the American people. And so it makes common sense. And, you know, when you start into it a little at a time, which our president is doing, so I congratulate him. I'm very thankful. You know, here we are, just barely through the first year. And look what he's done already. Isn't it amazing?
I would agree with you.
I'm so excited about some of the wonderful things that's going on in our country. But I do have a comment about some of the Democrats that are running for offices at this time. Many of them are incorporating conservative values and ideas into their campaigns. And I'm really concerned about many conservatives who will believe their promises. I'm afraid that once they will get into government, if they're voted in, that they will go back on their liberal ideas and incorporate those. I'm very concerned about that.
That's the bait and switch.
Exactly. You've got it.
Liberty Linda, thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. You have a wonderful day.
You too. Okay, our great friend Liberty Linda. You're listening to Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. And coming up, thanks to our friends at CapEd Educators and Team Mazda Subaru, it is back to school time. We're going to go see our old friends at Columbia High School. We'll be there on Thursday. Looking forward to getting back into the classroom, back in action, and again, promote our school, secure our future, thanks to our friends at CapEd Credit Union. Kevin Miller in the morning here. Phone numbers 580-5436. 580-KIDO. Of course, a big week. The president will make his case for the tariffs. In addition to that, many people believe that, it's a good thing, if you will, to take a look at these free trade versus fair trade. We have had free trade for quite some time, but free trade has not been fair for us for quite some time. We've seen the American steel industry go under. We've seen the Japanese, the Chinese dump foreign steel into this markets. And quite frankly, what is a nation if we cannot manufacture things? That is number one. Number two is the Oscars last night, and Hollywood left continues to grow more and more out of step with the rest of with the rest of the country. Here's Jimmy Kimmel. Well, that's quite a setup here.
Biscuit on VHS. But what happened with Harvey and what's happening all over was long overdue. We can't let bad behavior slide anymore. The world is watching us. We need to set an example. And the truth is, if we are successful here, if we can work together to stop sexual harassment in the workplace, if we can do that, women will only have to deal with harassment all the time at every other place they go. Over the course of this evening, I hope you will listen to many brave and outspoken supporters of movements like Me Too and Time's Up and
Of course, they forgot to talk about the fact that Kobe Bryant won an Oscar last night. Remember what happened to him in Colorado. Traffic and weather together. No, I think it really comes down to what a lot of famous athletes have said again and again and again. And sadly, they're right. They're not role models. It would be nice if we could go back to the days of Pleasantville. And really, that's what the Treasure Valley has always reminded me of, is of Pleasantville. We had people condemning a note written to a soccer coach in Eagle saying, we don't tolerate that stuff here. And he's right. Mark Johnson was right when he said that on Channel 7. However, we are seeing an influx of more people coming in. And when you have more people coming in, you're going to have the unsavory elements that many of us left other places to escape. And it's going to be up to us as members of individuals, of families, of churches, of the community to be the role models. Hollywood, certainly, there is not an actor today, outside of, I suppose, Clint Eastwood, who could be a role model. And even Clint Eastwood is not perfect, like all of us. But it comes down to the little folks, all of us building a community together to be the role model for today's youth.